But if we are moving or having the ball and moving it around doing this and we don't look how we're supposed to on offense, I'm not going to be happy with it if I'm not able to contribute how I'm supposed to.
Wow. Raiders star wide receiver Davante Adams was asked a lot of tough questions on Maxx Crosby's podcast, The Rush. We heard him mention Derek Carr, the Packers, and his future with the Las Vegas Raiders. And the guy could not even help himself. He even laid in to the media. We're going to talk about this and more. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content from me, Wi-Fi Willie. So most of the Raiders fans already know this story. They know the story that Davante Adams basically said he wanted to join the Raiders because Jordan Love was a question mark to him. He did not know if the guy was talented yet, and he was under the impression that his buddy from Fresno State, Derek Carr, would be part of the future with the Raiders since Josh McDaniels signed Derek Carr to a 3-year contract right after Davante Adams was traded to the Raiders. But of course, Josh McDaniels basically scapegoated Derek Carr for the entire 2022 season and released the guy, did not even trade the guy and get anything for him. And Davante Adams, the February after the disastrous McDaniels-Derek Carr season, did an interview with The Ringer where he publicly said that he does not see eye to eye with the Raiders front office right now, obviously about the quarterback position. So ever since that happened, 2023 was peppered with rumors on whether Davante Adams was happy with the Raiders. Does Davante want out now that the Raiders got rid of his best friend and the main reason why he joined the Raiders in the first place, Derek Carr? Of course, Adams wanted to push back against these rumors, but when he was catching horrible hospital balls from Jimmy Garoppolo, the same Jimmy Garoppolo who was nursing a foot injury the entire year, and on top of that, it was so common to see video of Davante Adams upset on the sideline, whether he be staring off into space or just generally looking unhappy with the situation. And it all reached a tipping point when he slammed his helmet on the football field, prime time against the Detroit Lions. But then the Raiders hired Antonio Pierce. They started Aiden O'Connell instead. The season ended on a positive note, and it made fans wonder what would have happened if Antonio Pierce would have been the coach the entire time. Would the Raiders have been in the playoffs last year instead? Even though things are in a positive direction right now, in light of everything that's happened, the big question is, does Davante Adams regret leaving Green Bay, especially now that quarterback Jordan Love is having success?
Yeah, you know, look, I'm like the poster child for you make a decision and you live with it, you know, at the end of the day. So I'll never regret anything. I mean, I don't care if it came here and my career went to shit. Like, you got to make decisions and roll with them. If you one of them people that gets hung up on, you know, in hindsight, this and that, then, I mean, you'll lose your fucking mind playing this game. So yeah. I don't regret anything.
So Davante Adams is saying he cannot live with regrets. As an athlete, as a competitor, as someone who has to keep moving forward to perform at their highest level, he cannot be backward looking. And I think these podcasts put him in a difficult position because he ultimately does have to reflect. He does have to look backwards. And that is why what he says next is very important, because even though he's trying to move forward, he still has to face the reality that his production and his career has been significantly affected by the decisions that he made.
And having a young guy that had no experience, for me, it was tough to stay in that position and say, this is what's best for me for sure. You know, Derek was, you know, at one point in the league, you know, he was a MVP candidate. Like, you can't say anything, you know, you cannot like Derek personally, but you got to respect what he's done, and that he solidified, you know, my decision to come here.
So there you have it. Davante Adams reaffirming the fact that his decision was rational at the time to move from the Green Bay Packers to the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders offered him a better contract. He got to be closer to his family, and his grandma was actually finally able to see him play in person. That's insane that she hadn't seen him play yet in person. And on top of that, he backs Derek Carr. Even though we have some, and I'll say some, dumbass Saints fans and some dumbass Raiders fans who can't move on and keep shitting on Derek Carr, Davante Adams, a world-class professional and athlete who knows what he's talking about, defends the quarterback and says, hey, dude was an MVP candidate, dude is one of the top QBs in the league, and obviously it was rational at the time to go and leave the Packers and play with a guy who he had chemistry with in college. Obviously, Davante Adams could not immediately predict that genius Josh McDaniels would scapegoat and ditch Derek Carr, and that Jordan Love would prove himself in 2023.
You know, that's a really wordy way of saying at the time when I was there, I hadn't necessarily seen enough to say this is for sure what I should do. But in hindsight, like we talked about, I mean, kid is a fucking baller, man. I'm so happy for him.
So he doesn't say that he regrets leaving the Packers, but he obviously admits that the Packers quarterback situation is a good one. And the thing that I have the most concern about throughout this entire podcast, the thing that I was incredibly disappointed with, is the fact that we do not have Davante Adams talking about the Raiders' current quarterback situation. We hear him mentioning Carr, we hear him mentioning Jordan Love. I have watched this full hour and 19-minute podcast on The Rush, Maxx Crosby's The Rush podcast. You should definitely check that one out and the Gardner Minshew one out. They're absolutely amazing. The fact that Maxx Crosby is asking him about Jordan Love, the fact that we're even talking about Davante Adams, regretting moving on from the Green Bay Packers, begs the question of the quality of the Raiders' current QB room. If the Raiders had Jaden Daniels on the roster right now, if the Raiders had Tom Brady right now, or even Kirk Cousins right now, would we be talking about Davante regretting leaving Green Bay? Would we be talking about Jordan Love and Derek Carr right now? And so I was looking for some optimism here. Maybe at a certain point, Davante Adams was going to be asked, hey, what do you think about Gardner Minshew? Are you looking forward to seeing Aiden O'Connell in his second year? But instead, we only heard a vague response on the expectations of the Raiders 2024 season.
Well, I don't have any expectations, but I do have a standard that we got to live up to regardless. And we set that, so, we control that with whoever comes to this building, all the people that are there. We got a really good system on offense now, and it's something that I'm very familiar with. It's what
West
I basically,
Coast.
It's literally the same verbiage, everything. It's the same playbook because, Getsy was my receiver coach, and then he took what we did in Green Bay over to the Bears, and they didn't have the best, cast to make him look good with that, but it's a hell of a system, so I'm really comfortable with it.
Davante does compliment the offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy. Sounds like he throws a little bit of Justin Fields shade by saying they did not have the right people in Chicago last year to make Luke Getsy's scheme work. But the only thing that I'm disappointed in, and I would love to hear more about, is about the quarterbacks on the Raiders roster. Is Davante Adams looking forward to how they will fit in Luke Getsy's scheme? We didn't get to learn that information. The funniest part of this podcast is when Davante Adams and Maxx Crosby talk about the media, mainly the Jets trade rumors that were lurking in the background surrounding Davante Adams last year. He claims none of those rumors were coming from him.
Because it was some stuff going on as far as like trade talks and all of this, and it was just a lot going on in the media that wasn't because of me, and it was being misconstrued by even some of my teammates. Thought that I was out there like talking to like SVP, telling them like, hey bro, I'm trying to get traded, like putting stuff out there, and they're talking about going to the Jets and this and that, and it's like, bro, like I'm not feeding any of that. That's not my style to do that.
Of course, Davante Adams is not going to tamper with another team. Of course, Davante Adams is not going to officially request a trade when the Raiders have so much money tied to him. But prior to the 2023 season, we saw him spend a full offseason trying to recruit Aaron Rodgers to the Raiders. That failed. And then when the Raiders were playing the Jets in 2023, you started hearing reports from ESPN that the Jets were going to stop at nothing to pursue Davante Adams. Obviously, with the Raiders QB and coaching situation up in the air last year, it made sense for the media to assume that Davante Adams was at least looking at his options. Just because Antonio Pierce is the head coach and Josh McDaniels is gone does not mean that the Raiders quarterback situation is solved.
There's certain things that I'm not happy about, but all this stuff, I'm not out here like putting this stuff in the mix and trying to create more drama for the team. Like I promise you, anything you hearing is just what people are speculating about or whatever. Whole reason why I hold myself saying I want to be an all-pro is not for my own, personal satisfaction. It's to uphold a certain level of play so that I can know I'm handling my part for this team. Definitely. If I'm an all-pro, that means Davante did his shit this year. So now it's on Maxx. Oh, Maxx, you all-pro? Okay, well, fuck, let's get a quarterback that can, and it's not about being all-pro, but it's about being your version of all.
Yes, I agree with Davante Adams. I highly doubt he's trying to fuel trade rumors. If anything, a smart player would just work that out behind the scenes. But what he just said there about his standard, how he's trying to prove it at the highest level and continue to be an all-pro, and then what he let slip right there.
Now it's on Maxx. Oh, Maxx, you all-pro? Okay, well, fuck, let's get a quarterback that can.
But that little side comment, let's get a quarterback. The reason why that trade speculation is always there surrounding Davante Adams, even if he is not fueling it, is because the Raiders have not had a franchise quarterback since Derek Carr left. If the Raiders had a franchise quarterback, if they had a Jaden Daniels, a Kirk Cousins, an Aaron Rodgers, hell, if Tom Brady came out of retirement, then none of these trade rumors would be here. So I understand Davante Adams' frustration with the media, but what is the media supposed to say when he's been critical of the quarterback situation for the past few years? And are we really supposed to believe that Davante Adams loves the Raiders quarterback situation right now he's stoked to work with Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell? How are we supposed to believe that when he did not say either one of their names in this hour and 19-minute podcast? Davante Adams obviously can only say so much. I do believe him when he says that he's committed to the Raiders, and I believe he will play the entire year and try to help them make the playoffs this year. However, I'm curious about next year. Davante Adams' contract is very interesting where it really changes next year, and there is a potential out for the Raiders after this season. His cap hit next year after this season is supposed to be $44 million with $15.7 million in dead money. That's more money than a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL. That's not sustainable. The Raiders are not going to pay a wide receiver $44 million for 1 year. So he's going to have to either take a pay cut, restructure his contract, or the Raiders are going to have to cut or trade him. So I am optimistic about this year. I think Davante Adams will gel well with the team this year, but I think this season is a trial run for the future. Davante Adams is going to have to look at this 2024 season with the Raiders and decide whether or not it's worth taking a pay cut for next season. And the Raiders are going to have to assess Davante Adams and look at their roster and their quarterback position and determine whether it's worth it to have a weapon like Davante Adams on the roster, especially if you're still looking towards the future and don't have the quarterback situation squared away. Either way, if there's any receiver who could turn a quarterback like Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell into a serious difference maker, it's going to be Davante Adams. So I still have high expectations for the wide receiver and the Raiders offense this year, despite the fact that a decision will have to be made on Davante Adams next season. Like this video if you have not yet, and subscribe to my channel Wi-Fi Willie for more content from me. Peace out, and I hope you have a good one.